So today I'm going to talk about template arguments. Um, so I don't want to talk about it too much, of course. I want to show it, but template arguments are similar to function arguments where you can, if you wanted to give it a default value, in this case a default type, you could do so, like in functions. So let's just create a templated class. So I'm going to say template type name is t. Let's just create a class in here called rocket. Public constructor called rockets, and oops, let's take in some arguments as well. So let's say an argument of type t. Let's call it size, and down here in the private, I'm going to create a member variable called msize and initialize that msize with our size, like so. And let's just print something out here. Created rocket. Okay, so that's a simple templated function, and if you wanted to create it, you'd do it something like rocket int and just call it rock. In fact, like so, and you would pass in a size for the constructor. So let's just give it some size, right? Now that's a simple looking rocket. Now let's just make this more interesting, right? First of all, I'm just going to create another function in here just to give it more functionality, I guess. Let's just call it launch, and that takes in a speed. And just to demonstrate what default arguments and functions are, which you probably should know, you could just give it a default argument like that, and it's going to use that speed. If the user calls this launch function without any arguments, it's going to use that default value, and that's how simple it is. And we're going to set that to mspeed, which we're going to create in a minute. Also, I'm going to just print something out. Launch Right, so that's our launch function, and let's just create a new type for this, mspeed, and the new type we can pass in here, type name s. Okay, so now if you wanted to create the same rocket, you would probably have to pass in the new type, just make it float, and in here you can pass in a float value, like so. Actually, the constructor doesn't take in a speed, but the constructor does take in a, you still need to define it, right? So the templates, right? And if you wanted to call the launch function, you can do it like so. And you don't have to give it a value in here because it's got a default value. So we could just give it a new value, something like that. But if you don't, if you choose not to, then it's going to use that 10 as the default. So we could do the same thing with template type names, right? So let's make this thing a bit more interesting. So let's think a bit more realistic sense. If you had a rocket, you wouldn't like passing in a size that's like a number or something. What does that even mean? I mean, is it the height of the rocket? Is it the width? We don't know. And yeah, if you were to be a bit more realistic, then you would give it a standard size that would include all those different sizes in that standard size. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create an enum class called standard size, and in here I'm going to give it a bunch of sizes. Small equals 0, mid equals 1, big is equal to 2. And let's just say you had a contract with another company that's a bit of a corporate company and they want their own size. They don't want to stick to the standard size. They want everything big. And well, because you have signed a contract, you kind of have to be able to manufacture rockets of their bespoke sizes as well. So let's just create another class for that company. And because they like things large, we're going to create an extra large, an extra large, right, something like that. So now what we could do is we could give this template a default argument. So you could say that t is equal to a standard size. So by default, when you're creating a rocket, you would probably want to give it a standard size and not like a bespoke size. Now you'd notice that we have an error here because same as in functions, you can't give it a default argument to something that's before an argument that is not default. So to fix that, we could make this a default argument as well, and I'm going to do int. And if you didn't want to do that, you could just move this on the other side. But since we can do it, why not? Why not make a default argument as well? Right. So then we don't really have to change anything. Down here, this is still going to work because you can override the default arguments, and yeah, so this is still working. But if you were to use those default arguments, you could just, get rid of this entire thing. You still have to use that signature, same as in functions. You can't get rid of the round brackets themselves because that's what tells it that this is a function. So in this case, what tells the compiler that we're actually creating a templated class is this signature. So you still have to use that, but you can get rid of these templated arguments because we have default arguments. If you wanted to create a class with those default arguments, that is. So let's pass in a standard size in here. Let's make it big, because why not? And you can also, well, you don't have to change anything here because, yeah, we're still using int over here. So yeah, that should work. And if you wanted to use this bespoke size instead, you could just pass that in here, bespoke size, and you can also make this, oops, something like that, and that would work. And if you didn't want to, if this looks too big, then you can replace this with auto, and that would work. And there you have it. You've created a rocket and you've launched it. Great. And that's how you create templated class with default arguments. Let's just stop that.